probably a number of parents here in the congregation, as well as teachers. And I found this out when I was a teacher. If I had to interfere with an altercation between two of the kids, often I heard the phrase, "He started it." And of course, I answered the time-honored parent, "Well, I'm ending it." Today, we look at that phrase, "He started it," in a new way. Our gospel gives us something really wonderful to consider, because God started it all. And what we find in our gospel today is what he starts gives us certain gifts, capacities, virtues, whatever. Think of this. We are able to love because God started it, loved us first. We are able to be people of faith because God started it by calling us to faith. We are able to trust in the words of Jesus because God offers that to us, that we can hear those words and trust in them. And finally, we can be at rest even from our burdens. We can lay them down and rest because God gives us his gentleness and his comfort in which to rest. Think of those wonderful gifts that we receive simply because he started it all. We are given love. We are given faith. We are given trust. And we are given rest. And if you think about how that shows itself out in our lives, it's amazing that we all have the capacity to love one another and to love God, and therefore to live a life of meaning, of purpose, of intensity even, and great beauty. Love does something nothing else can. And the reason we could do it is because God is love. He started it all out. And then we can be people of faith. God calls us to faith and then gives us a gift of faith so that we can deepen in our understanding of who God is, but more in our relationship with him. And that makes our lives better. It's not just saying, you must do this because this is what God wants you to do. God never wants us to do something that is not wonderful, that's not good for us, and that in the end doesn't bring us a sense of joy, of goodness in our lives. So we can be people of faith. And then we can be people who trust. And how can we trust Jesus? Because he started it. He gave us his words. He gave us his promise. He gave us the example of his own life. And we can trust in that. Jesus shows us through his own life that something special has happened in the universe. The Son of God came here on our planet to show us what our life can really be like, and that we don't need to ever be afraid of anything, especially death. Because Jesus, who rose from the dead, shows us that not even death wins. God always wins. He started it all. And finally, rest. Perhaps if you're like me, at the end of a day, I remember when at 2:30 in the afternoon, when I was teaching 7 periods of high school, at 2:30, I was happy to say goodbye to my students. But what I wanted more than anything else was just to put my feet up and rest from the day, from the burdens, from the decisions, from the altercations, from whatever it was. But I think all of us feel like that at points. We just want to rest. And to know that God is sensitive to that, to know that God understands that that's part of the human condition, and that Jesus, in this beautiful moment, says, "Come to me, and I will give you rest." Sometimes that is one of the most wonderful things to know, that we can rest in the gentle arms of Jesus, especially when we find our life burdensome, when we face difficult situations, when things hurt, when things cause us grief, when things cause confusion. Today, then, we come together as God's family, knowing that He is offering us so many wonderful things all the time. But in today's gospel, we hear about 4 specifics: that we can love and experience love from others and ultimately from God, that we can be people of faith, which means that our lives have a dimension that this world doesn't even see sometimes, that we can, no matter what the difficult situation is, trust in the words and the promises of Jesus, and that we can ultimately rest in His arms. Thank God, He started it all.